Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're back for another day, and I'm going to introduce myself since I didn't in my last video. My name is Benny Crocker. My business is Fitness with Benny's. I'm a certified trainer, certified nutritionist. I'm working on my corrective exercise certification as well, and eventually we'll be getting my LMT as well. So on this is really just for educational purposes, and we kind of realized, Jen and I both did, that there isn't anything out there for YouTube when it comes to anybody with a wheelchair or paraplegics. We couldn't find any of our information with being creative and finding some of the things that we needed to figure out being an athlete in a wheelchair. Now, with this, I'm going to talk about the most overused muscles that come into play when it comes to being in a wheelchair. There are roughly 4 that really all play a key role into the overuse and overload patterns that you find being in a wheelchair. If we ended up using our legs, that's what legs are for, walking, but if you're in a wheelchair, the upper body, the arms, the shoulders, all of this get used way too much. So they're not natural patterns, and I'll say this over and over. Pushing in a chair is a very overloaded pushing motion to get yourself going forward. The first muscle that we did and dug out last night was the upper trapezius, where we did it with the hypervolt. And I'll be doing a little bit more, but this is just really a rough overview of some of the muscles we will talk about when we start getting in more in depth for the individual muscles that I'll be talking about today. First one, pec major, pec minor, aka your chest. Now, the biggest part of this muscle is ginormous. It stems all the way to the sternum, all the way under, and its connecting point is up by the biceps. So you got this ginormous muscle, and it's very underestimated, like how big this is, but it is huge. And right underneath of that muscle is your pec minor. This is the tightest muscle on the entire body when it comes to pushing in a wheelchair. Now, Jen and I have both been doing this for over 20 weeks, trying to get this loose. Chances are it might not ever get back to a point of being at its optimal length, just because it's so overused for so long. Jen's been in a wheelchair for what?
38 years.
38 years, you know, and we, from in rehab and inpatient and then outpatient, after that, there's no direction to go. So you get put out in the street, you don't have the specialized equipment anymore or the specialized care. So what do? You kind of, that's what we're trying to fill, is that gap. So after this pec major, this is really pulling your whole entire shoulder forward, especially with the internal rotation of the scapula. And then the second one that we touched on yesterday is the upper trapezius. Now, this muscle sits right on top, just very, very broad, and it's very overused. So a lot of athletes in chairs end up getting their shoulders up to their neck, which causes a lot of frustration on your actual scapula. And then you got the scrunching and the pulling, which causes that chest to get really, really tight. So 1, pec major and minor, 2, upper trapezius muscles. Then the next one is right next to your upper trapezius. Now, if you can find this little bone right here, right above that, is your supraspinatus. Now, that muscle, it took us roughly 3 months to even get it to loosen up with constant digging. So it sits right above that little bone that's in your back. You can find it just by reaching over on each side, your supraspinatus, and then your infraspinatus is right underneath of it. That muscle is a pain in our butt, and it took us quite a while to get it out. So that's number 3, supraspinatus. Number 4 is the subscapularis. Now, the subscap plays a key role with the chest in its internal rotation forward, and that's where we had to really get back. So we're constantly trying to get the shoulders back. So those 4 tight muscles, not to mention the Levator Scapulae, which is in the neck, right back here, and you can find that's the one muscle that actually holds the scapula up. So if it's tight, your shoulder's scrunching up too. The weak muscles. Now, what happens when you're constantly pushing forward, the muscles in the back, your middle and lower traps, consider that area rhomboid, right in between your shoulder blades in the back. These guys never get any action. They will never fire. You got to reteach them. So what that means is not necessarily just automatically going to strengthen your middle and lower traps, but it actually means getting some of these other muscles to loosen up first, which we will start getting into in these next videos that we do, is we'll start talking about how to release these individually as we start building our little video group too. But those four muscles, pec major minor, upper traps, subscapularis, and the supraspinatus have been our four most problematic muscles being in a wheelchair. Now, as we continue this on, I can tell you the hips are another area that we're going to talk about too. Being in a constant flex position in the chair, that's where we'll really start growing and get better at this. So once that's done, we'll talk a little bit more about the pec major in itself. In the next video, I'll come back into that and we'll start showing you how to release some of these muscles and really what you can do by yourself without professional help and just keep using us as a reference. And like I said, we're on Facebook, Fitness with Bennies. It's just like fitness with benefits. Kind of laugh about it, but the goal is to have an all-encompassing fitness and working with some of the people that don't have the help that they truly need. And we want to be that for you. So stay tuned. We'll have a lot more videos, guys, so check back in.